The last gift, a dog's love beyond life. A fading light. Night had settled heavily over St. Vincent's Hospital, its dim corridors filled with whispers of sorrow and exhaustion. In room 312, the air felt thick with an unspoken grief. Liam Carter, only 8 years old, lay motionless in the hospital bed. His tiny chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. The monitor beeping weakly, each sound a cruel reminder of how little time was left. By his side, his parents, Emma and Ryan, sat in silence. Their eyes were red from crying, their fingers intertwined as if holding onto each other was the only thing keeping them from collapsing. But they were not alone. At the foot of Liam's bed lay Max, his loyal golden retriever. The dog had refused to leave his side since the moment they had been admitted. His head rested gently on Liam's frail hand, as if trying to transfer his warmth to his little best friend. Earlier that day, Dr. Nathan Reed had given them the words no parent should ever have to hear. "I'm so sorry," he had said, voice heavy with regret. "There's nothing more we can do. His heart is too weak. It's only a matter of time." Those words had shattered them. Time had become a cruel enemy, one they were powerless against. But Max? Max wasn't willing to surrender. As the night deepened, the dog suddenly lifted his head, ears perking up. His eyes locked onto the hospital window, where the moonlight spilled through the glass with an eerie brilliance. It was as if he sensed something. A presence. A force beyond human understanding. And then, the heart monitor let out an alarming beep. Emma gasped. "Doctor! Please, someone help!" The room erupted into chaos as the medical team rushed in. Dr. Reed checked the monitors, nurses adjusted the machines, but nothing was stabilizing. In that moment, Max leaped onto the bed, pressing his warm body against Liam's frail frame. "Get the dog off the bed," a nurse shouted. "No!" Emma's voice cracked. Please let him stay." Dr. Reed hesitated. They had exhausted every option. "Maybe, just maybe." He nodded. Max lay still, his breathing syncing with Liam's fading rhythm. And then, something unbelievable happened. The monitor's erratic beeping slowed, became steady. Liam's tiny fingers twitched. Then, his eyes opened. "Max, you stayed," he whispered, voice fragile but alive. The room fell into a stunned silence. Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. Ryan clutched his son's hand as if he had been brought back from the edge of the abyss. And in the corner of the room, Dr. Reed simply stared, because there was no medical explanation for what had just happened. But Max? Max knew. The unbreakable connection. The next few hours were a blur of emotions. Liam was awake, his heartbeat steady. The doctors performed test after test, yet none of them could explain his sudden improvement. But while everyone celebrated, Max's energy seemed to fade. The once vibrant, playful dog now moved sluggishly, his golden fur duller, his breath heavier. Emma noticed it first. "Ryan," she whispered, watching Max, "he looks weak." Ryan frowned. He knelt beside the dog, running his fingers through his soft fur. "You're right," he said softly. "It's like he's exhausted." Then, Liam spoke. "Mom, Dad. Max was with me." Emma turned to her son, confused. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Liam's blue eyes, still heavy with sleep, held something deeper, something knowing. "When everything went dark, I heard him," Liam whispered. "I was scared. But Max, he wouldn't let me go." Emma and Ryan exchanged a glance. Max whined softly, curling up near Liam's feet. As if even now, he wouldn't let his boy out of his sight. Dr. Reed entered, holding the latest test results. His face was a mix of relief and disbelief. "Liam is stable," he said. "But, we can't explain how." His condition was irreversible. Silence filled the room. Then Ryan spoke. "We have a theory," he said, looking down at Max, "but I don't think science will believe it." Dr. Reed followed his gaze and, for the first time, allowed himself to wonder. A price paid in love. As the days passed, Liam grew stronger. He could sit up. He could laugh again. But Max? Max was fading. He no longer played. He barely lifted his head when Liam called him. One night, as the moon bathed the hospital room in silver light, Liam stirred. He turned to Max. His little hands reaching out to touch his fur. "I know you saved me," he whispered. Max opened his eyes one last time, looking at Liam with pure love. And in that moment, something passed between them. Understanding. Gratitude. A farewell. Max let out a soft, peaceful sigh. And then, he closed his eyes forever. Liam let out a choked sob. "Max, no, please don't go." Emma and Ryan rushed to their son's side. Tears streaming down their faces. Max was still. His final gift had been given. And though his body was gone, his love remained. A legacy that lives on. Liam returned home weeks later. Completely healed. But the house felt emptier without Max. Until one day, Liam picked up a piece of paper and began to draw. When he was done, he handed it to his parents. It was a picture of Max, standing beside a glowing light. "He's still with us," Liam said with a small smile. Emma and Ryan held each other, eyes full of tears. They had lost Max, but they had not lost his love. To honor his memory, the family began volunteering at animal shelters, rescuing dogs in need. "Max gave me a second chance," Liam often said. "Now, I want to do the same for others." Max had saved one life. But his love would now save many more. Because love like his, never truly fades. It only transforms. The last gift, a dog's love beyond life. Part 1, A Fading Light. A battle against time. The fluorescent lights in St. Vincent's Hospital flickered dimly, casting a pale glow over the silent hallways. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside room 312, time had slowed to an unbearable crawl. 8-year-old Liam Carter lay on the hospital bed, his small body frail against the stark white sheets. The soft beeping of the heart monitor filled the room, each sound a cruel reminder of how little time remained. By his side, his parents, Emma and Ryan, sat in a crushing silence. Their faces, once full of joy and laughter, were now etched with exhaustion, grief, and an unbearable helplessness. They had fought so hard. Tried everything. Every doctor. Every experimental treatment. Every last shred of hope. And yet, nothing had worked. Dr. Nathan Reed, the head cardiologist, had given them the news just hours ago. "I'm so sorry," he had said, voice heavy with sorrow. "There's nothing more we can do. Liam's heart is too weak. It's only a matter of time now." The words had shattered them. Emma had collapsed into Ryan's arms, her body shaking with silent sobs. Ryan, always the strong one, always the protector, had barely managed to nod. His throat too tight to speak. But amidst the sorrow, amidst the suffocating weight of impending loss, there was one presence that refused to leave Liam's side. Max. The golden retriever. With his warm golden coat and deep brown eyes, had been Liam's best friend since he was a baby. Through every doctor's visit, every painful procedure, every sleepless night, Max had been there. Now, as Liam lay motionless, Max pressed his snout against the boy's cold hand, refusing to move. It was as if the dog knew. as if he could sense what was coming. And he wasn't ready to say goodbye. Neither was Liam. Even in his unconscious state, there was something in the way his fingers curled slightly around Max's fur, as if, somehow, he could still feel his presence. A whisper in the dark. The night deepened, and silence wrapped around the hospital like a suffocating veil. Ryan had stepped out to grab coffee, leaving Emma alone with their son. She sat beside Liam's bed, running her fingers through his damp, fragile hair. "My baby," she whispered, her voice raw. "You fought so hard." A tear slipped down her cheek, landing on Liam's small hand. He didn't move. Didn't react. Her heart shattered all over again. Then, Max stirred. The dog suddenly lifted his head, ears perking up. His body tensed. His eyes, once full of exhaustion, were now sharp. Focused, locked onto something unseen. Emma followed his gaze. The hospital window. The moonlight poured in, brighter than usual, illuminating the sterile white room with an eerie silver glow. A chill ran down Emma's spine. "Max," she whispered, wiping her tears. The dog didn't respond. He stood up on the bed, his stance alert, protective, sensing something Emma couldn't see. And then, the heart monitor let out an alarming beep. Emma's breath hitched. She grabbed Liam's hand. "Liam?" The beeping grew erratic. A deafening alarm filled the room. Panic exploded in her chest. "Doctor! Please, help!" The door slammed open as the medical team rushed in. Dr. Reed barked orders, nurses scrambled to stabilize Liam's vitals, but nothing was working. The child's heartbeat was dropping. Emma clutched her chest, her knees weak. This was it. This was the moment she had feared most. And then, Max jumped onto the bed. A miracle unfolds. "Get the dog off the bed," a nurse shouted. Reaching for Max. But Emma stopped her. "No. Please, let him stay." Her voice cracked with desperation. "We've tried everything. Please. Let him stay." Dr. Reed hesitated. He had seen miracles in his years of practice. But he didn't believe in magic. And yet, something in Emma's voice, something in the way Max refused to leave Liam's side, made him pause. "Let him stay," he said finally. The nurses exchanged wary glances but obeyed. Max lay down next to Liam, pressing his body against the frail boy's chest. He closed his eyes. And the room fell into a deep, unnatural silence. Then, the heart monitor changed. The erratic, failing beeps began to steady. One by one, the chaotic spikes on the screen smoothed into rhythmic pulses. Dr. Reed's eyes widened. The nurses gasped. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. And then, Liam's tiny fingers twitched. Emma froze. "Liam?" A faint whisper. "And Mom?" Emma screamed in relief. Tears streamed down her face as she cupped her son's small face. "You're awake. Oh, my baby, you're awake." Ryan burst into the room, his coffee cup dropping to the floor. He saw Liam, his eyes open, his small lips forming the faintest smile, and broke down sobbing. "Max, you stayed," Liam whispered weakly. And for the first time in days, he squeezed his best friend's fur. The impossible had happened. And yet, Max's breathing had slowed. A love beyond life. As the doctors scrambled to assess Liam's miraculous recovery, Emma's joy was suddenly overshadowed by a sinking feeling. She turned to Max. The dog looked different. Weaker. His once vibrant eyes had lost their brightness. His chest rose and fell in slow, labored breaths. "Max?" Emma reached out, fear gripping her heart. Max lifted his head just slightly. His gaze finding Liam. He licked the boy's fingers one last time. And then, his body went still. Emma's breath caught. Ryan's expression turned to one of horror. Liam, still weak, still barely understanding what had happened, whispered, "Max?" But Max did not move. Tears spilled down Emma's face. Ryan clutched his wife, his face buried in her shoulder. The dog who had saved their son had given everything he had left. And as the first light of morning poured into the hospital room, Emma swore she saw something. A shadow. A warmth. A presence. And she knew, deep in her heart, Max was still there. Watching over Liam. Protecting him. Forever. The last gift, a dog's love beyond life. Part 2, the price of a miracle. A silent goodbye. The golden hues of dawn seeped through the hospital room's blinds, casting soft shadows against the sterile white walls. The monitors beeped steadily, a sound that should have brought relief. But in room 312, relief was overshadowed by loss. Liam Carter was awake. His heartbeat was strong. His tiny fingers clutched at the hospital blanket, his face still pale but full of life. Yet, Max was gone. The golden retriever, who had never left Liam's side, now lay still. His chest, once rising and falling with deep, loyal breaths, no longer moved. Emma sat frozen beside Liam's bed, her hand hovering over Max's soft golden fur. "Max?" Liam whispered. His voice was fragile, but there was an innocence in it, a child's hope that maybe, just maybe, his best friend was only sleeping. Emma swallowed a sob. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and gently stroked Max's head. Cold. Still. Final. A choked sound escaped her lips, and she pressed her hand against her mouth, trying to contain the grief threatening to tear her apart. Ryan stood by the window, his back turned, his hands clenched into tight fists. He had always been the strong one. The protector. The one who shielded his family from pain. But this? This, he couldn't fix. This, he couldn't stop. "Mom?" Liam's small voice pulled her back to reality. His big blue eyes, still heavy with exhaustion, were locked onto her face. Why isn't Max waking up? Emma's throat closed. How could she tell him? How could she explain that his best friend had given everything to save him? She forced a shaky breath and wiped her tears. "Sweetheart." Her voice cracked. "Max, he saved you. But now, he's very tired." Liam's brows furrowed. "So, he needs to rest?" His fingers reached out, brushing against Max's ear. Emma's lips trembled. "Yes, baby. He needs to rest." Liam's gaze softened with understanding. He wasn't old enough to comprehend death in the way adults did. But somehow, deep inside, he knew. He slid out of bed, weak, shaky, but determined. Emma and Ryan instinctively reached out to steady him, but he gently shook his head. He lowered himself onto the cold hospital floor, right next to Max, and wrapped his arms around the dog's body. "You were with me, Max," Liam whispered into his fur. "When everything was dark. I heard you. You brought me back." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. Ryan turned from the window, his face unreadable, and knelt beside his son. He placed his large hand over Liam's smaller one, both resting on Max's unmoving form. "Thank you, buddy," Ryan whispered. His voice, deep and strong, was filled with raw emotion. And just like that, in the quiet glow of morning, a silent goodbye was spoken. Unanswered questions. Dr. Nathan Reed entered the room later that morning, holding a clipboard filled with test results that made no sense. Emma wiped her swollen eyes and stood up as the doctor approached. Liam's vitals are not just stable, he began, adjusting his glasses, but improving beyond what we expected. Frankly, this doesn't make any sense. Ryan crossed his arms. What do you mean? Dr. Reed hesitated, flipping through the pages. Before last night, Liam's heart was failing. His body was shutting down. There was no medical intervention that could have reversed it in that short amount of time. He let out a breath. And yet, here he is. Strong. Healing. Emma swallowed hard. Her gaze drifted toward Max's lifeless body. She already knew what had saved her son. And it wasn't science. It was love. But how could she tell a doctor, a man of facts, logic, and medicine, that a dog had somehow given his life force to a dying boy? She couldn't. So she simply said, "Maybe some things can't be explained." Dr. Reed didn't argue. He looked over at Liam, who sat quietly, his fingers still woven through Max's fur. The doctor's eyes softened. "Maybe not," he admitted. Then, after a long pause, he added, "I'll give you all some time." And he left. Signs of something more. That night, Liam refused to sleep in his hospital bed. Instead, he curled up on the small couch in the room, the same spot Max had always rested in, and closed his eyes. Emma and Ryan didn't argue. They sat together, whispering, trying to process everything that had happened. Then, something strange occurred. Ryan, still restless, stood by the window again. The moon was high, casting silver light over the city. And then, he heard it. A soft whimper. His heart stopped. He turned sharply, eyes scanning the room. Max was gone. But for a fleeting moment, just for a second, Ryan could have sworn he saw a shadowy figure of the dog near Liam's bedside. He blinked. The shadow was gone. But a strange warmth filled the room. It was subtle. Unexplainable. But real. Ryan let out a shaky breath, rubbing his face. "What is it?" Emma asked. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Nothing," he said, voice thick with emotion. But deep inside, he knew. Max was still here. Watching. Protecting. And he always would be. A new purpose. Liam was discharged 3 days later. His heart was strong. His energy had returned. But Max's absence left a gaping hole in the Carter family. His toys remained untouched. His bed was still in the corner of Liam's room. But his presence? It was everywhere. One afternoon, Liam picked up a crayon and began drawing. Emma and Ryan sat beside him, watching as he carefully sketched a picture of Max, standing beside a glowing light. "He's happy now," Liam said softly. Emma brushed back his hair. "You think so?" Liam nodded. "He told me." Ryan and Emma exchanged glances. They didn't question it. Instead, Ryan cleared his throat. "Maybe we should help other dogs like Max." Emma looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" He exhaled. "Max gave Liam a second chance. Maybe we should give other dogs a second chance too." Emma's lips parted in realization. Then, she smiled. "I think he would love that." From that day forward, the Carters began volunteering at animal shelters. Helping lost and abandoned dogs find homes. Giving hope where there was none. Because Max had taught them something precious. Love never fades. It only transforms. And sometimes, it stays with us, even when we can't see it anymore. The last gift, a dog's love beyond life. Part 3, Love that never leaves. A home without Max. The house was too quiet. It had been weeks since Max was gone, but his presence was everywhere. His empty bed sat untouched in the corner of Liam's room. His favorite chew toy, a worn-out stuffed bear, lay next to the couch where he used to nap. The faintest sound of nails clicking against the wooden floor, once a comforting rhythm, was now an unbearable silence. Liam had been doing better. His health had improved miraculously, and doctors called it an unexplained recovery. But Liam knew the truth. It wasn't a mystery. It was Max. Max had saved him. And now, Max was gone. Emma and Ryan did their best to move forward. They smiled for Liam, made his favorite pancakes in the morning, took him to the park. But at night, when the house was still, Emma would find herself staring at Max's old collar, tears pooling in her eyes. Ryan, always the quiet protector, wasn't much different. He couldn't even bring himself to put Max's things away. Because deep down, they weren't ready to say goodbye. And maybe, they never had to. The first sign. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. Emma was washing dishes when she heard it. A faint whimper. She froze, her hands still submerged in soapy water. Her eyes darted to the kitchen entrance, half expecting Max to be standing there, waiting for his morning treat. But there was nothing. Her heart pounded. "Emma?" Ryan's voice startled her. He had just stepped into the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Ryan frowned. "Hear what?" Emma hesitated. Had she imagined it? Had grief made her hallucinate? She shook her head. Nothing. But deep inside, she wasn't sure. A whisper in the dark. That night, Liam woke up gasping. His little body sat upright in bed, his heart hammering. He had been dreaming. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. He had seen Max, standing at the foot of his bed, wagging his tail, looking at him with those same loving brown eyes. "Max?" Liam whispered into the darkness. Silence. But then, a soft thud. Like the sound of paws landing on the floor. Liam froze. He turned his head toward the corner of the room, where Max's empty bed lay. And his breath caught in his throat. The stuffed bear, Max's favorite toy, was not where it had been before. Liam had left it on the shelf before going to sleep. But now? It was on Max's bed. His little fingers trembled as he reached out, picking up the bear. It smelled like Max. Like warmth. Like home. A tear rolled down his cheek. "I miss you, Max," he whispered. The air in the room felt different. Not cold. Not eerie. Just comforting. Like a hug you couldn't see. And for the first time since Max was gone, Liam smiled. Helping others, in Max's name. The next morning, Liam told his parents about the dream. About how Max had been in his room. About the stuffed bear that had moved on its own. Emma and Ryan exchanged glances. They didn't know what to say. They didn't want to tell Liam it was just his imagination. Because deep down, they believed him. "Maybe he's telling us something," Liam said, his voice small but certain. Ryan frowned. "Telling us what?" Liam hesitated, looking down at the bear in his hands. "That we need to keep helping." Emma's chest tightened. They had talked about it before, volunteering at animal shelters, helping dogs find homes, doing something in Max's memory. But grief had held them back. Maybe they weren't ready. But maybe, they never would be. Maybe the only way to move forward was to start. Ryan exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "Let's do it." And with those words, the Carters began their journey, one that would honor Max's legacy forever. The shelter that changed everything. Their first visit to the Haven Hope Animal Shelter was overwhelming. The barking of dogs. The soft whimpers. The hopeful eyes of animals waiting for a second chance. Liam walked past kennel after kennel, stopping to press his small hands against the fences. Whispering to each dog, "You're gonna find a home soon, I promise." Emma and Ryan spoke with the shelter volunteers, learning about the animals' stories. Most had been abandoned. Some had been abused. And all of them needed love. Then, they saw him. A small golden retriever mix, curled up in the corner of his kennel. His fur was rough, his body thin, as if he hadn't been eating properly. But his eyes. They were warm. Familiar. Liam gasped. "Mom. Dad, look." Ryan's throat tightened. Emma covered her mouth with her hands. The little dog lifted his head. And wagged his tail. Liam dropped to his knees. "Hi, buddy," he whispered. "What's your name?" A volunteer stepped forward. "That's Toby. He was abandoned a few weeks ago. Poor thing hasn't really bonded with anyone, until now. It seems." Liam pressed his forehead against the kennel door. "You're not alone anymore, Toby." Emma and Ryan didn't even have to say it out loud. They knew. Toby was coming home. A new beginning. The first few nights with Toby were quiet. He was shy, hesitant to trust. But Liam? Liam understood. He spent hours sitting beside him, talking softly, offering gentle touches but never rushing him. Until, one night, Toby curled up on Liam's bed for the first time. Emma, watching from the doorway, felt her eyes sting with tears. She turned to Ryan, whispering, "Max would be proud." Ryan swallowed hard. He already is. And as they walked away, leaving their son with his new best friend, a soft breeze passed through the room. Not cold. Not eerie. Just comforting. Like a hug you couldn't see. And for the first time since Max was gone, the house didn't feel empty anymore. Because love never truly leaves. It just finds a way to live on. Part 4, a love that never fades. A house no longer empty. It had been a month since Toby came home. At first, the little golden retriever mix was quiet, hesitant, unsure. He didn't know whether to trust the Carters. Whether this place was truly his home. But Liam knew what to do. He never rushed him. He let Toby come to him at his own pace, just like Max had done when Liam was a baby. Day by day, the shy little dog began to open up. First, it was a small tail wag when Liam entered the room. Then, it was a soft nuzzle against his hand when he offered treats. And finally, one night, when Liam had fallen asleep, Toby curled up beside him on the bed, just like Max used to. That was the night Emma and Ryan knew. Toby was home. And yet, something strange was happening. Something they couldn't explain. The signs continue. At first, it was small things. One morning, Emma found Max's old collar lying in the middle of the living room floor. She frowned. "Ryan, did you take this out?" she asked, holding it up. Ryan looked over from the kitchen, sipping his coffee. "No. Wasn't it packed away?" "It was." Emma hesitated, staring at the collar. She had put it in a box with Max's other things, tucked away in the storage room. There was no way it could have gotten here. Unless. She shook the thought away. Maybe Toby had found it. But Toby was still asleep in Liam's bed, his tiny body curled up, nowhere near the living room. Emma's heart beat faster. "Maybe it's nothing," she muttered to herself. But deep down, she wasn't so sure. Liam's dream. That night, Liam had another dream. He was back in that warm, glowing place, the same place he had seen when he was slipping away in the hospital. But this time, Max wasn't calling him back. He was watching over him. Standing beside him. Happy. You don't have to be sad, buddy. Max's voice was soft, familiar. Liam's chest tightened. I miss you, Max. Max's tail wagged. I know. But I'm always here. Liam looked down and saw Toby, sitting beside Max, looking up at him with those same gentle, trusting eyes. Take care of him, Max said. He needs you, just like you needed me. Liam's eyes welled with tears. I will. Max took a step back, the glowing light surrounding him growing brighter. I love you, Liam. Always. And just like that, he was gone. Liam woke up with a soft gasp, his heart pounding. He sat up, looking around his dark room. Toby was beside him, awake. Watching him. His little tail thumped against the bed as if he had seen the dream too. Liam smiled softly. I know, Max. And for the first time in weeks, he felt peaceful. Something unexplainable. It wasn't just the collar. Little things kept happening. Max's old ball appeared in the yard, even though it had been missing for months. The couch, where Max always used to nap in the afternoon, would have a small dent. Like someone had just been lying there. And sometimes, at night, Ryan would hear it. Soft footsteps. Gentle breathing. Like a dog was walking the hallways. Only, when he got up to check, Toby would be fast asleep in Liam's bed. One evening, after dinner, Ryan finally spoke. Emma, do you feel it too? She set down her cup of tea, looking at him. Feel what? He hesitated. Like Max is still here. Emma's breath hitched. She had been trying not to say it out loud. Trying to rationalize it. But now, as she looked into Ryan's serious, unshaken eyes, she knew. Yes, she whispered. A long silence filled the space between them. Then, Ryan let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. You know what's crazy, he muttered. Emma raised an eyebrow. That we're even questioning it. And she smiled. Because he was right. Some things didn't need explanations. Some things just were. A message from beyond. A few days later, the Carters took Toby back to the Haven Hope Animal Shelter, this time to help other dogs find homes. It was their way of honoring Max's love, giving another dog the second chance he had given Liam. They walked through the shelter, greeting dogs, talking to families looking for pets. Then, in one of the smaller kennels, Liam stopped. Mom. Dad, look. Emma and Ryan turned. There, painted on a small sign above the kennel door, was a name. Max's Legacy. Ryan's breath caught. Emma covered her mouth. Liam simply smiled. He wanted us to know he's okay. Liam said, soft but certain. Emma wiped her tears, squeezing Ryan's hand. And that we're doing exactly what he hoped we would. They adopted another dog that day, a shy Labrador mix named Charlie, who had been in the shelter for months. And when they brought him home, something unbelievable happened. Toby, who was usually quiet and nervous around new dogs, immediately ran to Charlie. Tail wagging like crazy. Like he had known him forever. Like he had been waiting for him. Emma's breath hitched. Max brought him to us, Liam whispered. Ryan let out a deep breath. Nodding. Yeah, buddy. I think he did. And as the sun set behind their house, painting the sky in gold and orange, Emma swore she saw it. A shadow, standing in the yard. Not scary. Not sad. Just watching over them. Protecting them. A presence that had never truly left. She blinked. And it was gone. But her heart felt warm. Because some love never fades. It simply changes shape. And stays with us, always. Life lessons from this story. The story of Max, Toby, and the Carter family teaches us profound lessons about love, loss, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Love never truly leaves. Max may have passed on, but his love for Liam never faded. It simply transformed, continuing to protect and guide his family in ways beyond understanding. This reminds us that the ones we love never really leave us. Their presence stays in our hearts, our memories, and sometimes, in the small, unexplainable signs around us. Every goodbye is also a beginning. The pain of losing a beloved pet is unbearable, but through that pain, the Carters found a way to heal, by opening their hearts to Toby and, later, Charlie. Love is not meant to end. It is meant to grow and be shared. When we lose someone, the best way to honor them is by continuing to spread the love they gave us. Animals are more than pets, they are family. Max did what even medicine couldn't, he saved Liam with his love. Animals have an incredible ability to sense our emotions, heal our hearts, and even change our lives. This story reminds us that our pets are not just animals. They are our family, our protectors, and our greatest friends. Helping others is a way to keep love alive. By helping shelter dogs, the Carters continued Max's legacy. This teaches us that the best way to honor a loved one is by carrying forward the kindness they showed us. Whether through animals or people, acts of love create ripples that last forever. Have you ever felt a connection with a pet, even after they were gone? Do you believe animals can sense things beyond what humans can? Share your story in the comments. If this story touched your heart, hit like to honor the love between pets and their humans. Subscribe for more emotional and inspiring stories about the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that will move your soul. Remember, love never fades, it just finds a new way to stay with us.